So, welcome, friends. It's Saturday morning in Thailand at 9 a.m. and evening time in Friday evening in the West. And today we want to touch on several topics. And the first one that we want to talk on is basically a completion of what was talked about on last Sunday on the call about the word anatta, and that basically what the word means is not no self, and it doesn't even mean specifically no soul. But what it's talking about is that there is no eternal soul, or let us say, unchanging soul or unchanging self. That in fact, the two extremes would be eternalism and nihilism. And nihilism would be there's no soul, there's no self, there's nothing. And in Sutra number 117, that's expressed as no mother, no father, no teachers, um, no action and result of action and other things like this. And you can imagine that the people who hold that kind of view would be the ones who uh, it's kind of a childish view, basically, that has the phrase, "I can get away with anything. I can get away with it." The other extreme would be eternalism, which means that there is result of good and bad action. There is authority figures. There is perhaps even a God. But the teaching of anatta means that it's neither one of those things. It's in between, perhaps, and that it's subject to investigation, that we have to keep looking. So, in a way, you can say that no self is not the correct translation, because no self, none at all, would be a nihilistic view, as opposed to there is a self, there is a soul, and it's permanent, and that would be eternalism. And so, probably the best way to describe it, humorously, in fact, would be sometimes you feel like a nut, and sometimes you don't. Things happen because of causes and conditions, and that it's important for us to start paying attention to that. Now, we can also go so far as to say that nihilism and eternalism are merely concepts, they're merely ideas, and that what we're actually practicing is reality. So we can talk about the anatta in that regard in the introduction of that there is no eternal overlord, there is no eternal owner, that in fact, at best, ownership is quite temporary. You can think of being a guest rather than being the owner. And you can think of that in reality, you're a guest in your own body. That body is temporary, but there's no landlord that's going to come and kick you out, but the house is going to fall down because it's temporary too. All things are temporary in that regard, and that as we are let us say, raised from infancy into childhood, we, uh, as children, ignorantly get the delusion going that there are authorities. There's a mommy that's going to boss us around, and a daddy, and uncles, and teachers, and whatnot like that. And so we get into a victim's position of needing to be taken care of. And almost everyone, in fact, you could say that everyone continues to grow up in that victim's position so that by the time that we become an adult, the uh, the top dog, or the one that we are a victim to, is actually some god or some overlord, or some kind of an authority over us, and that the priests and preachers make quite a lot of money off of that, um, keeping us in a one down position. Also, um, we don't really have a good handle on what happened in the lifetime of Jesus, but we do know that by the second century, around 320, Constantine changed religions in the Roman Empire from Mithraism into um, Christianity, which means it became a state religion, which meant that Christianity, let us say, performed the duties of keeping the emperors of Rome and the popes, etc., in charge. They became the substitutes for the big authority figure of God. But Buddha says is that that doesn't exist. That kind of overlord, that kind of an authority doesn't exist with us. That what we have instead is the reality of the situation that needs to be investigated, rather than deciding that we're a victim to some god or some religion or some government or some authority like that. Now, what happens with us is that we also sometimes decide that we are the authority. We're the one who knows. We're the guy in charge here. And so we can see that in the realm of advice. Mickey asked to talk about advice some today, and we can see that if we are given advice, the reality is that we don't have to take that advice. As a child, when an adult gave advice, the child felt obligated to take the advice, but he didn't want to, and so he rebelled. So we rebel against authority by not taking advice. And the opposite of that is that then when we give advice, we become the authority and say, do what I say to do, take my advice, to where no one is under any obligation at all to take your advice. In fact, most likely what's going to happen when you give advice is that they're going to rebel against it and not do it, or try to figure out a way around what you've had to say. Um, and so that just goes further to prove that there is no authority, that everybody is out there on their own. Now, that also means that as far as getting help, there's no real help available. The advice that you are given, you have to go and investigate that advice and apply that advice and make sure that you're practicing correctly, and continue to look to see that. And also, on the other side of that, that when you do gain some proficiency, become what Mikey calls a seasoned practitioner, then you give advice, and the likelihood is that people are not going to take it. And so we're caught in this system of rebelling against an authority that does not exist. And we pretend to be an authority when in fact we can't do that. And so this is basically the main source then for bad feelings, or dukkha, is because of this delusion of this one up, one down system that we call hierarchy. And the reality is that in nature, there is no reality of hierarchy. Everything is just subject in fact, to cause and effect. The Pali word for that is idiopapajayata. Everything is subject to causation. So, in that regard, when the self comes up, it comes up because of conditions. It's conditioned to do certain things. And the conditioning for the becoming of a self is, in fact, clinging. And the clinging is, in fact, conditioned by our feelings. And our feelings are conditioned by that which contacts us. And what contacts us is, in fact, the stories that we make up about what we take on as input. And that story making process is then would be referred to as, in the Pali Namarupa, or we can think of it as perception. But a better way of talking about it is storytelling, that we tell ourselves stories. And one of the main stories that we tell ourselves is, I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I've got to go find an authority figure to tell me how to do it so that I can rebel against him. And this is the way that we live our lives because of ignorance. And so the solution to the ignorance actually is investigation. And the investigation has to be ongoing. It is not a one-time shot where you see something and then you make up a concept. Oh, I saw it and I know what it's like, because everything is subject to change, including our perceptions. And so the entire practice of the teaching of the Buddha is to have an ongoing investigation, to investigate the four foundations of mindfulness, to investigate what's going on with the body, to investigate what's going on with our feelings, to investigate what's going on with our mental states, and to continue to investigate the thoughts that come up. So, this is all coming from Sutta number 117, called the Great 40, and that we investigate in order to see clearly so that we can change. That there is nothing permanent, there is no such thing as a personality, that in fact we are taught that people, by the time that they grow up, they have an established personality. This is who they are. Now, we can also see that much of our personality is based upon how we were trained, that the sons become like their father. In fact, as much as the son rebels and hates the father when he's a teenager, by the time he's 40, he's just like his dad because of that programming that we ignorantly take on. That in fact you can be whatever you want to be so long as you can investigate what you are right now and make a change to that to become what you want to be right here, right now. Now, one of the things that happens with this process of investigation is that people will investigate how they are. They see, oh, this is not satisfactory. Oh, this is in fact unwholesome. And then the next thought that they will have is, that's terrible. I should not be having unwholesome thoughts, which is just another unwholesome thought. That in fact, the wholesome thought to have would be, aha, I see you, unwholesome thought. And therefore, we can make a change to it. So, this is in fact the entire process. It's actually quite a simple process, but it has to be practiced over and over and over again. Nothing is fixed. Everything is changing. It's a fluid environment. And that for some reason or another, people get the idea that fluid environment is actually kind of fixed, but that's only true because we don't investigate correctly to see that there's no entity There's no landlord. There's no God that's causing things to happen. That it's just merely the conditioning of reality. For instance, at one time, they had a sky god. They called him Zeus in Greek system, and that the sky god was in charge of the weather, and that he would throw his trident, and it would land in the form of lightning. And so, lightning. Uh, uh, GTC, can you turn your microphone off? There's a lot of noise on it. Thank you. So, if we can see then that there is no sky god, there is no Zeus there, and that, by the way, Zeus and Jupiter and other old gods like that, and including Woden, uh, these sky gods actually are just simply cause and effect, that there is no God up there. But religions can capitalize on that and say, oh, yes, there is a God up there, and we know all about him, and we can communicate with him. So you give us your money, and we'll operate in behalf of that God. And it's all just kind of a magic show, and that leaves everyone without a real way of dealing with reality, because we've got these delusions, these belief systems about it. So the correct way of practice is to see, first off, there is no overlord, there is no deity, and that there is nothing permanent, including nothing permanent about your personality. This is, in fact, the first fetter to be overcome, is to recognize that you're not fixed, that you can change. The second one is that the second fetter is called Sila Bhatta Paramasa, and what that actually means is that what becomes the overlord, what becomes the God, is in fact the kind of delusions we have when we make up rules. So, ritualized behavior, rules, the way things are supposed to be, idealism affects us quite a lot. We think, in fact, that ideal is real, where in fact, no, it's just a story that we made up. And so, if we can begin to see through these uh, supposed to's, rites, rules, rituals, we can begin to see also that we've been living our whole lives either conforming or rebelling against this system of belief that has no basis in reality. There's many examples of that. One of them is the medical profession. The doctors go around telling people, oh, you need to do this and you need to do that, and this and that is bad, and all of this kind of stuff, to where, in fact, they don't know a lot. It's not wise to rely upon medical profession, and that there is a group of people who are called hypochondriacs that go and constantly rely upon, oh, they need help from a doctor, oh, they need this diagnosed and that diagnosed, and they need this, that, and the other thing. One of the things that I saw as a child as a contradiction like that was is that they say that being obese, being overweight, is dangerous and it shortens life. Well, I had a great big old fat great great grandmother who died at the age of 101. No, 103, she did. And then I had her daughter, Grandma Young, who died in her late 90s, but she died kind of early because the doctors gave her a colostomy, and that's what killed her, not her old age. And then my grandmother had three sisters. All of them were fat except for one, Aunt Iris. And Aunt Iris was the one who died youngest. And all the rest of them who were fat, including my grandmother, died at the age over 100. Well, if you've got that kind of evidence and you see it often, then in fact, George Burns is another good example. They say that smoking and drinking is bad for one's health, and yet he lived to be over 100, smoking great big fat stogie cigars and drinking wine. He was known to be a drinker. So, medical profession is not always correct, and yet we go to them for all kinds of advice instead of doing what really needs to be done, and that is to investigate your own body to make sure that you can see what's going on and deal with your own body accordingly rather than looking for some authority figure to take care of you, because there's an awful lot of authority figures out there that'll care for you for a great big fat fee. And so be careful about paying a lot of money. Now, I'm not saying don't ever go to a doctor. They are good for some things. They're good for setting broken bones, for instance. But a lot of the stuff that doctors do is not curative. There was an old joke on television. Maybe you've heard of the series was the Beverly Hillbillies, when Granny came up with a concoction for curing the common cold. And it was a great big deal until she described that the common cold, that she's got this concoction that if you take it every day, your common cold will go away within 2 weeks. Well, guess what? Common colds will go away within 2 weeks, whether you take any medicine or not. So, there's so many different places that we can see that we rely upon authorities, to where in fact the reality or the real way to deal with people is to deal with them in the moment of what's happening right now, based upon investigation, to look and to see, to look at your own body, to look at the way that you feel. Another system of authority figures is called psychology and psychiatry, to where the psychiatrist, all they know how to do is to give out pills, and that the psychologists normally go for talk therapy. But there was experiments done back in the 1970s that were kind of buried because it didn't give the results that they wanted. And it was a double-blind controlled study, to where some people who were depressed were given medication, some people who were depressed were given talk therapy, and some people who were depressed was given an exercise program, a regime. And guess what? The results were that exercise was the best cure for depression, not talk therapy, not the pills. And guess who has to do the exercise? Does the psychologist do your exercise for you? No. Does the psychiatrist pills cure you? No. But you can cure yourself by getting up and getting out and moving about and seeing what's going on with your own body. So these are the ones that I'm pointing out. That doesn't mean that we don't use any advice or we don't use any teachers, but just remember that the teacher cannot do it for you. You've got to do the work. You can sit in, for instance, a math class and listen to the teacher, but until you go and do the examples yourself, you're not going to get a whole lot out of math. You've got to go do it yourself. This is the main teaching that we can say that can be applied then to the teachings of the Buddha, rather than seeing him as a great big teacher in the sky or something magical, whatever like that, is to be able to see that what he has to say can be applied to yourself in your own life, and that's it. You do it yourself. He was the only thing that he had going. In fact, there's a sutta number 104, I think, where Ananda, after the Buddha's death, was visiting a Brahmin, and the Brahmin asked him, "What's the difference between the senior students of the Buddha and the Buddha himself?" And Ananda answered, "There is no difference except that the Buddha was the one who figured out that we can make changes to our lives. And then he made those changes, and everybody else behind him got that information from him, but they had to do their own practice. And so the difference between the Buddha and the Arahat is only that the Arahat followed the teachings of the Buddha and practiced it themselves, as opposed to the Buddha had to go and figure it out because there was no one who could give him the instructions on how to do it. And the basic instructions in the Eightfold Noble Path is, number one, to remember to keep looking, to keep coming back, to keep remembering to be in the present moment over and over and over again. Why? Because we are subject to instincts, and we're subject to old patterns of the mind. We're subject to rules and rituals that we've been practicing. We could call all of this habits, habit patterns of the mind, and that those habit patterns of the mind becomes one's destiny. But we can overthrow that destiny by remembering to come back to the present moment and see how things are right this very minute. This is the basic practice. We don't have to go to a retreat. We don't have to sit on the floor in a meditation hall with candles and incense and a picture of the Buddha or a monk or someone sitting up on the dais. We don't have to practice meditation in that formal way, but we can practice over and over and over again. We can practice to look at what we're doing, look at what our thinking is, and then change it for the better. This is the practice over and over and over again. So we have these three things to remember, to investigate, to look, and to make a change. These three things become skills that wrap around each other, that work around, going one after the other in the circle, and that basically, the major problem that people have in the practice of meditation is that they'll remember to look and to make a change and to change the unwholesome thought to a wholesome thought. And then the next thought is going to be an unwholesome thought, like, is this good enough? Or this is hard to do. Or I feel joyful, but not joyful enough. So we need to see that second thought also, so that that second thought, we can change it into a wholesome thought also, and then the thought after that, so that we can begin to have one wholesome thought after another in a sequence, but they don't happen automatically. We have to remember to make that change one thought at a time. This is all there is to it, is to make that change one thought after the other. Now, there's a sutra number 119. The name of it is Two Kinds of Thought, where the Buddha talks about what is a wholesome thought and what is an unwholesome thought. And thoughts of greed, thoughts of ill will, thoughts of cruelty, thoughts of getting something are all considered unwholesome thoughts, and thoughts that have no greed, no ill will, no cruelty are in fact wholesome thoughts. Then the Buddha gives an example of a cowherd. Now, this cowherd is not like they had in Rawhide, where you've got thousands of cattle that are being driven to a remote destination. That this cowherd only has about 8 or so cows, and that his job is to take the cows out in the morning and go through the village to the place where there is food for them, rice stubble and pasture land. But the cows, when they're going through the village, they see the vendors and they want to get carrots off of the vendor store. They also want to just go as they please and not watch the children. If the cow herd let those cows just go, they'll get into the laundry, they'll stamp around, they'll throw things up, and if this happens, the village people are going to become very unhappy with this cow herd because he's not well managing his cows. But once he sees that the cow is about to misbehave, this is why he carries a stick so that he can whack that cow and says, "You don't take that carrot. You don't go in that direction. You stay in line until you get out to the pasture." Once the cows get out to the pasture, now the cow herd can relax. He can keep his eye focused on the cattle, but he has to watch them, but he doesn't have to stand there with them, whacking them. So you can see now that that's the same as the practice that we have is that when we are beginning to get started, we have to guard that mind because that mind is like a cow. It's likely to go anywhere. And so we have to whack that cow to get him back into the right path. And so over and over and over again, we have to correct the mind, put it into the wholesome state, and then when it gets out to the pasture, the mind then can stay in that wholesome pasture, one wholesome thought after another. And so this is the practice. Once we can get the mind in that state to where we can have one wholesome thought after another, that is when we begin to really feel good. Well, I can do this. Well, I can control my mind. But we have to practice over and over and over to do that. Now, this is Sutta number 117 that we're talking about. That when we get that fourth item, that is called Sammasankappa, and it's an attitude change. So the beginner is going to start anapanasati or start the Eightfold Noble Path practice like a loser, like a victim. Oh, this is hard. Oh, the unwholesome thoughts keep coming back and coming back. But if you keep practicing, then these thoughts can become wholesome because we take them and make them wholesome. You can begin to see I can have one wholesome thought after another, and that gives one confidence so that we can do it. So that we come to the point that no matter how obstructed the mind gets, no matter how unwholesome it has become, I can see that and I can change it. Wow, I can do this. Now, that's a major change in attitude from being a victim, oh, poor me, this is so much work, into becoming the winner of, I can, in fact, keep my mind pure. I can keep it wholesome. So, this is actually the practice. And when we can do these four things of remembering to look, to change, and to congratulate ourselves for it, that brings about a state of mind that's called unification of mind. The Pali word for it is samadhi, but the word samadhi has been rightly and wrongly translated into the word uh, concentration. And then many people think that concentration means to focus down on one little object rather than this broad way of looking at what you're thinking, looking at how you feel, looking at the way that you see things. In other words, your mental state or your attitude, and look at the body. So it's not concentrating on any one particular thing. A lot of people think that anapanasati is actually focusing on the breath, and focusing on the nostrils. And that's not in the suttas anywhere. That's not what the Buddha taught. Then, in fact, he doesn't teach focus at all. What he talks about instead is unification of bringing the body, the mind, the mental states, and the feelings into a unification. This is the teaching of samadhi, and that we can practice that with anapanasati. Not a step, but item number 9 is in fact this investigation. And then item number 10 is to gladden the mind. Now, when we say gladden the mind, that's two things going on. One is that we have wholesome thoughts, and then the gladdening part of it is to change that attitude from being the attitude of a victim into the attitude of a winner. With that, winner's attitude, we can begin to change our feelings so that we can feel safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied. This is the teaching of the Buddha: safe, secure, comfortable, and satisfied. We have to keep practicing that over and over and over again. And when we do, we'll get great results, great benefit. But for some reason, this seems to be really a weird thing to do. And so people keep questioning and keep thinking about it and whatnot like that, instead of just actually doing it, to practice, to remember, to look at the thought and to change it into a wholesome thought, which is gladdening the mind, which changes our attitude and changes the way that we feel. Safe, secure, comfortable means that the body becomes comfortable and the body relaxes. If the body is not comfortable, there's no way to come to the state of satisfaction. So we have to be safe, secure, comfortable, and then satisfied. This is the way to practice, and this is the only teaching that the Buddha gave. That's the only teaching he gave. And yet, there has been in Western Buddhism all kinds of other systems and techniques that have been developed. Some of them are called vipassana. One of the things that I'll mention about the word vipassana is that it's very rare. It doesn't appear in the Majjhima Nikaya at all, and it only appears in the Samyutta Nikaya in one or two specific places. And so the Buddha did not teach vipassana, which is translated as insight. He taught instead to investigate and see what's there. Now, insight actually normally means insight into something really deep that we have to go digging down. And this is why they also talk about it in the sense of concentration. You've got to go deep into meditation. But this is not what the Buddha taught. He taught to investigate what you can find right here on the surface and change that. Don't worry about changing something deep, because deep doesn't really exist. That you can think of it as deep is the same thing as this atta, or this soul, or this self that goes really deep and is hard or impossible to change. Rather, see it as easy to change because it's right there on the surface. All we have to do is to look and to see and to change. This is the basic teaching of the Buddha. So, let's pause there and get some feedback. So, Matt, talk is for you. What do you think?
Yeah, right on. Thanks for explaining that, Dhammarato. Um, so I was really struck when I was looking at the Anapanasati Sutta. I didn't see anything about focusing on the nostrils or this area or any of the kind of things that I was learning before. And yeah,
Nostrils are
so
not there nowhere
yeah,
until you
right.
get to literature that's 1,000 years after the time of the Buddha.
Yeah,
Go
that's
ahead.
super interesting. Like to put it into, so you were pointing out to that the Anapanasati Sutta makes more sense, like with the context of this previous sutta that's talking about the. I think this is the one with the metaphor of the cowherder.
No, that's number 19.
The
So
one
we have
after.
19 and then 117 and 118.
Okay. Right. The one before is the one that's talking about this. You said the four steps. There's the remember to look. There's the categorizing wholesome, unwholesome. There's the changing, and then there's the congratulating.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which is the gladdening the mind, the brightening the mind, changing the mind's attitude, and that's what brings about the samadhi, is your attitude change.
Mm.
So let's move on. We'll come back to you. Okay. Christina, what do you have to say?
I thought it was helpful to make the distinction that anatta's that translation is deceiving, and that it suggests that not self is fixed and permanent, and that's not a helpful translation. I tend to say anatta non-self and use that as like footing, but that's not helpful.
No, that's nihilistic, in fact, that the
Yeah,
correct way to say it is sometimes I'm selfish. Can I see when I'm selfish? That's unwholesome.
yeah, yeah. No, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Right? So, Karwan, I guess you're in traffic, so we'll leave you alone for the moment. Ivan, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I think like when people want to catch this, like deep thoughts, or like they want to uh, the insight, like deep meditative state is uh, like the way I see it is like the current arising thought is the only thought you have to see. The only thought you need to catch and change that. Uh, like it's right there in the surface, but people don't think that's important. People want this, I don't know, somewhere deep inside, but that's the procrastination on practice or not practicing correctly. I just want to say that.
But you can see that that idea of these psychological problems that are buried so deep in our psyche, that comes from psychology, that comes from psychiatry. And guess where they got it? They got it from religion. And so, even though the psychology and psychiatry didn't doubt even exist in the time of the Buddha, what he taught about anatta was about the religions, in the sense of things are seen to be long lasting and permanent, where in fact they're not. They're temporary. They're temporary arising. They come right to the surface, and when they come to the surface, you can see them. No need to go deep. And that I've seen people who can see the defilement or the unwholesome thought come up. And this woman was actually in fact, she still is a meditation teacher. And when she saw those unwholesome thoughts come up, what was her thought? I see you and I can change you right now. No, her thought was, oh, I need to go deep into meditation so that I can find that. Well, guess what? She missed the opportunity right then and there. Right then and there, she could have dealt with it, but instead, she says, oh, I've got to trot right over to the meditation hall and sit my butt down on some cushion and wait for a while and then see what happens. And that's not the way that the Buddha taught. He did not teach meditation. No place in the sutras is the word meditation ever. What he did teach was go to the forest, go to an empty hut, go to the foot of a tree and sit down and start looking at what's going on. That's what the Buddha taught. And so, in fact, it's only in the past 50 or so years that meditation retreats have ever existed. It didn't exist for 2,500 years. It's a new invention, and it's a real moneymaker. And guess what? The people who are running these retreats are not super duper gurus. They're not great big teachers. They're just ordinary people who are practicing wrongly and teaching you to practice wrongly also. So, Matt, you turned your camera back on. Do you have something else to say? A question or whatever?
So this is actually Sean. It's Matt and Sean here. And
Okay.
I just wanted to chime in and ask a question. So really, I appreciate everything you're saying in regards to the issue with the authority figure, and then I mean even in the sense that like not even making yourself one. Like you're saying these things, but the idea is for us to go fucking try it. You know, like why not? Maybe it is all on the surface. I hadn't. So that's the idea, and I think that's really easy to get behind, and I would like to start doing that more. I've been dabbling a bit from what I've watched earlier, but I was curious if we could just go through an example, like an easy one, like right now. I mean, so I have a lot of like got a head injury a few years ago, so I have a lot of pain. That's like just always like in my body all the time, and like but I
Oh,
notice as I
it's
sit
not.
here.
It's
uh,
not. It's not there all the time. This is the whole teaching. Anatta it does not mean that there is no pain ever, but it also means that there is no pain there all the time. That all the time is the problem. You just said it's there all the time, and you already know that it's only there occasionally. And when it comes up, you don't like it.
And that's a really good pointer, I think. And then the other question was, so right now it is here. And so I guess
That's because you're
as
paying
I sit
attention
here,
to it.
some pain, probably.
But when you're
But as
paying
I sit,
attention to me, you're not paying attention to it.
right,
And
and
then
so
you
the
go back
idea
and
would
pay
be,
attention to it again.
right, so the idea perhaps would be to get present in the room that I'm in, or with what you're saying. Like this is the prescription, right? Like this is the recipe is watch for this feeling of like I don't like this. I don't want
Like
this.
it. That's the issue. Pain is,
Right.
in fact, just a pain. The I don't like you is like cutting yourself a second time.
Right.
But if you can say, oh, I see the pain, but I have been dealing with it and I can deal with it right now. I don't have to see it as pain. I don't have to hate it. I don't have to not like it. The pain comes and goes when you pay attention to it. It comes and goes. But whenever it comes, you don't like it because that's your habit. You can change that habit from, instead of I don't like this pain, into, oh, I see you again. There it is. I see you. I see you, Mr. Pain. And I'm still okay. So the
And
problem is not
I
the pain
guess
itself. The problem is you don't like it.
right.
And that's the part that you have control over.
And I think you're hitting the nail on the head in terms of like what the process is like it's not that I don't like it, it's that there's like more to it. It's this feeling that it's an unsafe feeling, right? Like this feeling And so I guess what we're saying is that the way, as an example, through that is to change the thought into like looking around the room and like noticing how safe I am, regardless of the presence of the pain or not. Is this the idea?
Yeah, exactly. That you are safe, even though there's some pain there. It's not killing you right now. It doesn't have you
Mhm.
on the floor with his hand. The pain's got his hands around your neck, choking you. It's just there from time to time. And when it does come, you don't like it. And it's your not liking it that has you on the floor with his hands around your throat. Not the pain. It's your not liking it that's causing you so much dukkha.
And then I guess yeah, like so I think I've been playing with those two first steps. I think the last one of the congratulate yourself feels different, and I'm so like if we walk through the whole thing, notice the pain, notice the aversion to the pain, notice that I'm okay instead, and focus on that. And then what it's like pat yourself on the back, I did it type of thing. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the next step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
you can do that. And the more you do this, the better at it you'll get, the more results, the more benefit you'll gain, and therefore the higher the congratulations. So that the pain becomes nothing at all. Right now, you're saying, oh, it's always there. Oh, poor me. Oh, I hate it. I need to get rid of the pain, right? There will come a time when you say, there's nothing to it. I can handle that. All an attitude change. Okay. All right. So, Michael Swift, what do you think?
I think this was a great talk, Dhammarato. Thank you very much. I'm reminded of a thing. I just recently watched the Charlie Sheen documentary, and that was his catchphrase, winning. And I can relate it to maybe not in that sense, but the winner's attitude. And yes,
Yes, become
being
that
it,
winner because
yeah,
you can become the winner over your own bad feelings.
yes,
You can become the winner over your attitude so that you no longer feel like a victim, especially to some authority figure, so that you can become confident in yourself, knowing that that self is a moving object.
right. I believe you said in one of the previous talks, the word for that is strata,
Strata, right. Sada
confidence.
is confidence. The
Right,
confidence you can do this.
that's right. Wonderful. Thank you, Dhammarato.
Mm-hmm. So, how about you, Rose? Do you have something to say?
No, I thought that was really good and I can apply it to my headaches. So thank you for that example.
Yes, good. How about you, Red?
Yeah, I some big when big sources of pain come. One recent was my headaches and my stomach was not acting well either. So it was like two sources of quote unquote pain. So I was able to remember some of those some of the time that pain was arising. Yes, no, I can do that, but I still don't have the habit of doing that all the time. So I'm just learning.
Well, don't try to think that you've got to do it all the time, but what the
Mhm.
important thing is that you can do it
Mm.
right now when you think of it, right now,
Yes.
over and over and over and over. Remember, nothing is permanent. The
Mhm.
operative word, by the way, is unremitting. Unremitting is like this over and over and over and over. And a lot of people think that
Mhm.
meditation is like this. Okay. And it comes up and then it stays there. Think of it like playing a drum. Is this the right way? This is the mallet and this is the drum head. Is this the right way to play a drum? No.
Probably no.
No, you hit it, you hit it, you hit it over and over and over again. This is the way. And when you become skilled at this, it's like becoming a skilled drummer so that you can do it in a roll.
Yeah.
Keep coming back and keep coming back.
Oh yeah, you said about the opportunity also. In that what about the small pains? What about the small sources of pain that people keep forgetting also?
Well, this is why we need to practice, is because small things will continue to come based upon conditions. Sometimes there's small things and sometimes they're not. Sometimes there's this small thing and then that small thing. When these come, can you remember to look? Because if you can look and
Thank
see
you.
it, you can change it.
Yeah, we can do it. That's a practice, basically.
All right. So, Manny, welcome, friend. Is this your
Hi.
first call?
Yeah.
Welcome. What do you have to say about what you've heard today?
Just wanted to ask, how do you tell if a thought is wholesome or unwholesome?
All right. That question is actually an unwholesome thought. Let us say this, that let's put the wholesome thoughts on a continuum, or thoughts on a continuum, so that at one end of the scale, they're unwholesome. They have thoughts of greed, ill will, thoughts of harming, thoughts of not getting what one wants, thoughts of being a victim. On the other end are thoughts that we know absolutely are wholesome. Thoughts of, I can do this. Wow, this is great. No problems, no worries. Got nothing to do and no place to go. Isn't this nice? All of those are wholesome thoughts. But most of the thoughts you have are someplace in the middle. And that the job is that by practicing having thoughts that are wholesome, and practicing having thoughts that are not wholesome to be thrown out and to change into wholesome thoughts, fairly soon you'll begin to see that most of those thoughts that were in between are actually not so badly unwholesome. They're just generally unwholesome. An example would be, oh, I've got to go to the bank. And then we think about what we're going to do at the bank. That's an okay thought, not necessarily terribly unwholesome. But how many times do you think about going to the bank before you actually go to the bank? When in fact, you don't even need to think about going to the bank but one time. But we plan and we plan and we plan and we plan and we waste our time thinking about going to the bank when we could think about, right now, I don't have to go to the bank. Everything is great right now. And yet we keep planning and planning and planning and doing the same thing over and over and over again, which is not getting us in a state of feeling really good. So most of the thoughts that you have are in fact unwholesome, or a better way of saying it, they're hindrances because they hinder a person into feeling really, really good, safe, secure, comfortable, satisfied, and successful. Those would be wholesome thoughts. What do you think?
How do you stop thinking the unwholesome thoughts?
Well, the first thing you got to do is to see it and then change it. Change it to one of the wholesome thoughts that I just mentioned. Like, hey, I can handle that. Oh, there's no problem here. I don't have to think about that. I can think about something nice instead. And what is something nice? Everything is okay. Think of thoughts of being satisfied with how things really are, as opposed to wanting things to be different.
Makes sense.
Hmm. Easy
Can,
enough to
can
do. But we can sit there and ask and ask and ask and ask and ask questions. But until you actually practice changing the mind from an unwholesome thought to a wholesome thought, we're not getting any benefit. That in fact, wanting to know the answer to questions is unwholesome, because you don't know the answer now to that question, but you're okay right now. So instead of saying, I need to know the answer to that question, you can say, oh, well, I can happily research it because I'm okay now, even though I don't know.
just to clarify with the bank example, like
Uh-huh.
if you've already thought, hey, I have to go to the bank, and continuing to think about what you need to do at the bank instead of that's like unwholesome, or kind of on that line. Maybe something more wholesome perhaps would be to just like realize how comfortable this couch is and just kind of, yeah, like everything's okay. I'm here on this
Everything's
couch.
okay. And everything
Okay.
will be fine when I do go to the bank. So the only things that we need to do in advance is to make sure that we've got the pile of stuff that we need at the bank. Got the ID, got the checks, got the passbook, got the whatever we need in a pile. And now that we've got that pile going, all we have to do is sit back and enjoy the moment until the moment when we get up and go to the bank. We don't have to keep thinking about the bank over and over and over again. Most people will go to the bank in their head 100 times before they actually go to the bank. And you can take that to anything.
Thank you.
Think of going to school 100 times before we actually go to school, when in fact we only need to think of it one time. And then the rest of the time we can think of, wow, I don't have to go to the bank right now. Oh, everything is okay right now. No worries, mate. Everything is good right now. So these are the kind of wholesome thoughts that we start to develop. Okay, CT or GCT. Do you have anything to say?
Yeah, I just want to say I think you're a cantankerous old man, and I love you and respect you to death because you're me 20 years from now.
All right. Probably
I
not.
deal with I deal I
You'd be
deal with
your own
people all day
cantankerous old
long.
man. Pardon?
I deal with people all day. I deal with people all day long, and you and I are just almost the same.
What, not expecting anybody to do what we advise them to do, huh?
Uh, well, you tell them to go left, they go right, and then want to know why the brakes failed.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, and the time thing. I don't know if you remember this, but a lot of my patients, I have them listen to Jimmy Buffett. You remember him?
Don't know him.
He
A
had a
musician?
song. Yeah, he had a song in the late 70s. He went to Paris looking for answers to questions that bothered him so. Well, at the end of the song, he's 80 years old. He still hadn't found the answers. And somebody asked me, play it for my students, and they'd say, "Well, what does that mean? You'll find the answers, or you won't, one way or the other."
Actually, the answers are not important. What's the important thing is, can you feel good? Can you feel okay? Rather than feeling
Exactly.
bad because we don't know.
Exactly. He never found the answers, and he says some of it was magic, some of it was tragic. But you know what? I had a good life all the way.
Yeah,
And too many people
keep it
don't
light.
understand that. Too many people don't understand that.
Well, even if they do understand it, they still don't practice it.
Well, this is true. I'll give you that. Credit where credit is due, and the utmost respect where it is due.
Well, thank you. So, Mikey, why don't we take this thing home?
Yeah, thanks, friends, for being here today. Friendly reminder to take it easy, take care, and enjoy yourselves. Y'all are welcome to stay here. No need to leave. Can keep on hanging out here in the Hangout channel on Dhamma Friends. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're also welcome to come join us. And you can find these episodes also on Spotify, iTunes, and other podcasting platforms. If you guys haven't yet, go and visit the OpenSanghaFoundation.org. You can find links to things such as our Sangha map, where you can find watts and things like that. There's also plenty of other resources to look around and play with on the Open Sangha Foundation website. So yeah, thank you all, and yeah, don't worry, be happy.
So I'm going to leave now, but I invite you to stay on. Don't. Hello, Mr. Ben. I missed you. Do you have anything to say?
Only that the only problems are the ones that we think. If we think there's a problem, there's a problem. If we don't think there's a problem, there's no problem.
There's no problem.
Stop making
That's
shit
right.
up.
All right. So, Matt, stay and talk to Mr. Ben. He's quite an old student. In fact, I invite everybody to stay for a while. Mikey's going to stay on also, and you can talk and talk all you want. Discuss what we talked about today. And the cantankerous old fart's going to go. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Dhammarato.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Thanks, Dhammarato.
Thank you.
Thank you.